Hi, I'm Steve Murphy, and this is the Insider Exclusive. Welcome to our show. Today we're featuring a special feature called the IRS and You. If you owe taxes and you haven't paid them, we have guests on our program that will show you how to deal effectively and solve your tax problems. Stay tuned.
I'd gone to a tax preparer that was incorrectly doing tax returns, and I got a letter from the IRS saying that I owed $32,000.
They're going to garnish money in bank accounts if you have an IRS problem and you don't deal with it.
Right.
If you have your head in the sand, you're just asking for more trouble because these problems don't go away.
The IRS came to you and said that you owed X amount of dollars. What was it?
$38,000.
It's always better to go to the IRS with a representative versus them having to find you.
It was probably one of the worst feelings I've ever come across. I just threw my arms up. I gave up. I couldn't go on anymore. Michael got the ball rolling, and within a year, a little over a year, settled for pennies on the dollar. Best feeling. It's like the weight of the world's been lifted off my shoulders. I'm still with Michael, and I'm going to remain with Michael for the rest of my life.
Today we have a special show on the IRS and you, because everybody's got a problem with the IRS. It's just a matter of how you handle it. And Mike Rosbrook, who heads up an organization called Tax Resolution Services right here in Los Angeles, is with us today sharing some solutions. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you, Steve.
I understand that your organization is headed up by 2 CPAs, right?
Yes, myself and my partner.
And you also have lawyers on retainer?
Actually, they're on
staff?
staff. They're on staff. We have 5 attorneys on staff.
That can handle more difficult situations
Yes.
that come about, right? A lot of people are audited, aren't they?
Oh, yes.
And my question to you, and this is a question for everybody, is how do you avoid an audit?
It's difficult to avoid an audit. However, there are some tips that I can share with your listeners on how to avoid an audit.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is don't do your tax return by hand, and if you do it by hand, make it legible.
So in other words, if it's sloppy, it's automatically going to be
It's a
audited.
fishing expedition if it's sloppy.
Okay.
They're going to go after every single line item. And then be careful on transposing or not to transpose Social Security numbers on you, your spouse, and your dependents.
People make those mistakes.
All the time.
Mhm.
All the time. Third one is they have what's called a DIF score, the IRS. It's called a Discriminant Information Score.
Okay.
And what that looks at is, besides looking at your regular income and deductions, they look at where you reside, they look at how large your family is, they look at what your occupation is. In other words, if you're living in the Hamptons on Long Island in a large mansion and have 4 kids and you show $30,000 of adjusted gross income.
And a professional job custodian?
Yes, they're going. Now that may be true. You may be living off relatives or
Right.
friends, or you
Right.
may have refied your house and living off those funds.
Mm-hmm.
But the IRS wants to make sure it's true. So you're getting picked for audit, and you have to prove to them why it's true.
They have a lot of variables they look at, don't they?
Oh yes, absolutely.
And what are the common things that people try to put over on the IRS?
Well, if you're filing a Schedule C, if you're an independent contractor
Mm-hmm.
or a consultant, a lot of people commingle their personal expenses and put them on the Schedule C as business expenses.
Right.
The largest area being automobiles.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone thinks, oh, I'm in a business, I can deduct 100% of my car.
Right.
And you can't, because you must use that car to go buy groceries or go to the movies or just take your kids to school, et cetera, et cetera. So you really don't, unless you have another vehicle for that, you can't claim 100% for business.
Well, let's say an independent contractor, salesman, he's making $100,000 a year, but he's driving around a Bentley. And it's costing him $4,000 a month, or $50,000 a year. Does that fly with the IRS?
No, it doesn't.
Can the guy deduct it? I mean, you just said a minute ago he can write off his automobile expenses. Can he deduct it?
He can, but that deduction is going to be such a huge percentage of his gross $100,000 income,
Right.
It's going to send a red flag.
So they're going to come back to him and say, what? You can't drive that Bentley?
No, they're not going to say that at all. They're
What are
going to
they
say
gonna say?
they're going to look for unreported income. And if they find that he underreported his income by 25%, they can now go back 6 years. The
Really?
3-year rule is out the window.
So if they find that you maybe defrauded them, they can increase the time that they can go back and audit.
Yes,
And it's 6 years max.
6 years.
What about I've heard this thing about a home office.
Yes.
Is that a red flag still? A lot of people working at home.
It is if you're also an employee. So if you put a figure on line 7 for wages and salaries, and you claim a home office, which it may be legit, you may have a second job.
Yes.
It's going to send a red flag.
As long as that second job is, the home office is substantiated by a second income.
Yes, yes. Now,
Interesting.
the other thing is, every audit that we approach what I call an eggshell audit.
Right.
Because 50% of the referrals that Criminal Investigation Division gets is from the Audit Division.
Okay.
And it's usually because of underreported income.
Do you, when a person is audited, can you prevent it from going to the criminal division by
Yes.
jumping in there sooner?
Yes. As a matter of fact, one of the things the IRS does at the initial meeting with the
Yeah.
taxpayer, and they usually call us after they have this meeting, are a series of 54 questions. And they sound very innocent sounding questions, but it's,
Such as?
do you have any cash at home?
Well, why wouldn't anybody have any cash at home?
Well, you have to condition or qualify that answer.
Okay.
Most people say yes.
Okay. And what should the answer be?
The answer should be is, yes, I have $15 or $20 or $50.
In other words, quantify it.
Yes.
Okay.
Quantify it and say where it came from.
Yes.
You know, I used the ATM machine to pull some money out.
Okay.
Which means that that's fine, because you probably have already paid taxes on the money that went into the bank.
What are some of these other 54 questions?
Some of them are, do you do any bartering? Do you give your services in exchange for other services?
Okay.
Who does the books? Who goes to the bank with the bank deposit? It's a series of questions like that.
And if you score a certain level, then what happens?
Then they're going to expand the scope of the audit.
Right.
They may want to see your, let's say they're auditing 03. They may want you to produce the 02 return and the 04 return. And if those issues that they're auditing on your 03 return are the same issues in those 2 years,
Yes.
they're going to open the scope up of the audit.
A lot of the IRS personnel in Los Angeles know you. You've handled over how many cases?
Thousands of cases.
Thousands of cases, and you've done, a fantastic job for a lot of people. So when you have your voice, you have a lot of credibility when you walk in with them, because they know that you're not BSing them, right?
Correct.
And they know, for example, on these offers and compromises, for example, that the person really can have a lot of assets, can they?
Right, yeah. And if they, we won't take a case. Let's say we take a
Yeah.
case and the client is not forthright with us.
Yes.
Through our investigation, and it's not a...
It's up front.
It's up front. We require certain financial documents. If we
Right.
see that this person had a house that he never told us about, or is making a lot more income that he never told us about, we'll say, hey, you're not an offer candidate. We're not going to present an offer on your behalf.
Right.
We're going to convert the case to a payment plan.
And you work out something that might be acceptable to
Yes.
them, okay? If you know the IRS is, because this show is all about, how you solve people's tax problems.
Yes.
If you know the IRS is after you, what are some of the things that you should do immediately?
You should come forward. You should get representation. It's always better to go to the IRS with a representative versus them having to find you.
What about money in bank accounts?
Well, they're going to garnish money in bank accounts if you have an IRS problem and you don't deal with it.
Right.
If you have your head in the sand, you're just asking for more trouble, because these problems don't go away.
What about retirement accounts? Are they subject to IRS levies?
Absolutely.
Retirement accounts?
Absolutely.
Really?
It's safe in
Pensions?
bankruptcy.
Pensions?
What the IRS does is they step into the taxpayer's shoes. So if the taxpayer is eligible to get the money, so is the IRS.
Including pensions?
Yes.
I mean, we saw this case with OJ. He's got a $33 million judgment against him. They can't touch his pension, but the IRS can?
Yes, the IRS can. He doesn't have IRS
So there's
problems.
nothing
The only
sacred.
thing that is disability payments. If you're on disability for an ailment or an illness, the IRS does not attach that. But they do Social Security all the time.
It's important to emphasize one thing, that if you do get contacted by the IRS, you shouldn't go meet with them yourself, right?
No, you'll get creamed if you go up against them yourself.
Because you don't know the right answers, you don't know what not to say. Correct?
And you have rights. I mean, one of the
What
main...
are those rights?
Well, one of the main rights a taxpayer has is the right to representation. You can stop the conversation or the meeting dead in its tracks
Right.
and say you're going to get representation.
Besides offer and compromise, what are some of the typical, most common areas that problems that people have when they come see you?
Payment plans, we deal with payment plans. That's paying the IRS back on time.
Yes.
Over a certain time period, like a car note payment. We do currently not collectible status. If someone is really behind the eight ball, but they can't afford the fees for an offer, or they just don't want to do an offer, we'll get them in what's called currently not collectible, where they don't have to make any payments at all. The interest and the penalties continue to accrue, but they're not
Right.
required to make payments. We do the 10-year collection statute analysis, penalty abatement. We request penalty removal all the time.
Explain for our viewers, penalty abatement, what is that? That means you've already been attached to penalty, but what happens?
What happens is if you have reasonable cause, in other words, if you incurred that penalty due to circumstances or facts that were outside your control, beyond your control,
Yes.
the IRS will abate penalties if we can present a very good story and cite other court cases where the IRS has cited in favor of the client.
I once talked to a CPA who told me there are people out there that have psychological problems, they have addiction problems.
Yes.
Does the IRS provide some sort of leniency, or I don't know whether I'm using the right word here, for these people who are, let's say, not mentally competent or
Yes.
emotionally competent?
Yes.
And what are those provisions?
Well, a lot of them are today depression,
Yeah.
bipolar.
So you have a diagnosis from a doctor. You didn't file taxes because a lot of people are depressed about owing money, right?
Yeah, also, but it has to show that you also didn't work. If you can work, if you can hold an 8 to 5 job all
Any
year
job.
round,
Yeah.
you should be able to file your return.
Okay.
So the illness has to also affect your earning capacity.
Okay. What other kinds of common problems do people come to you with?
I just had one the other day. I have a nonprofit corporation. Someone formed a nonprofit here in Los Angeles
Right.
and failed to file the return on time.
Okay.
And the nonprofit has over $1 million in assets. If you have $1 million in assets and don't file the return on time, they slap you with a automatic $50,000 penalty.
This is outrageous.
That's right.
50,000 just because you're a nonprofit?
Yes, and you didn't file the return on time.
Well, this can kill you.
Well, that's why the client retained us.
So what is your approach with them?
Well, we're going to do a penalty abatement. There was a problem with the handoff of the books and records, and someone was
Right.
supposed to file the
So a
return.
legitimate problem.
Yes.
Okay. Do you find that the IRS has kind of, do they listen to what you're saying about this? I mean, do they have a soul? Do they have a heart?
Well, most of these cases I'm describing are not going to settle at the first level of defense.
Yes.
They're trained to say no.
You've already told the client this.
Correct.
Okay.
What we do is we go to appeal. And at the appeal, this is all administrative. At
Yeah.
the appeal officer is charged with what they call hazards of litigation.
Yes.
They have to make a decision on what a jury of this person's peers is going to decide.
So they're placing their bets.
Yes.
And
85% of the cases, though, settle at
Right.
the appellate level before going to court.
Fortunately, we have some of your clients on the set today
Great.
who willingly came forward and said, Mike did such a great job. I'm going to take my Saturday off. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to tell him what he did for me. And we're going to bring them on right now, one by one. Okay?
Terrific.
All right. And you're doing a great job. One of my first guests, and a client of Mike's, that took the time off on Saturday to come here and speak the truth about Mike and tell what he did for him is Matt Cinquenta. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve.
Tell us a little bit about what you do for a living. I understand you're an independent contractor, or you were, right? And your MO was basically you felt like you didn't owe Uncle Sam any money, or you're going to pay him later. Was that right?
I guess.
Okay, that's it. Yeah. And that later came sooner than you thought, right?
It did.
And the IRS came to you and said that you owed X amount of dollars. What was it?
38,000.
38,000, which was more than you had in the bank at that time.
Yeah.
Okay,
A
so
lot more.
so you went to a guy by the name of Mike Rosbrook,
That's right.
and he solved kind of your tax problems, didn't he?
He did.
What did he do for
Absolutely.
you?
Well, he took that $38,000 liability and reduced it to $1,500.
One of the things that's fabulous. One of the
Yeah.
things I want to emphasize to our audience is you were going through a lot of stress, right?
Absolutely.
You own a car, I would imagine, right?
Yeah.
By the way, Mike, can the IRS take your car even though you owe money on the car?
No, they don't
They
want
can't.
it if it's encumbered.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Was your
Well,
car encumbered?
You bet.
Yeah, but the bottom line is you were concerned about it because A, you couldn't buy a house, B, you really couldn't buy anything because you had to deal with them first.
That's right.
Because that shows up all the time. And Mike, let me ask you, the IRS, their tax liens come before everybody else, don't they?
Yeah, what's interesting about this is the only creditor in the world where a statutory, which means a legal lien, already exists. They don't have to file anything.
Yeah.
As long as you don't pay your taxes,
Right.
the lien is already there.
So you had a friend, didn't you? Tax people.
Yeah.
How long did it take? You made an offer and compromise, right?
That's right.
And how long did it take? About a year or something?
I think it was about a year and a half, I think.
Yeah.
Important to emphasize with our audience that during that year and a half, the IRS couldn't touch your assets, your wages,
That's right.
your bank account, nothing, correct?
That's correct.
Correct.
And that's their agreement that they have working
Yes.
it out, correct?
Yep.
Do they monitor it? Do you have to report anything to them?
Well, in the offer and compromise, they look at Matt's financial situation at the beginning,
Okay.
the midpoint,
Yeah.
and more intrusively and more vehemently at the end when
Right.
they're getting ready to settle.
So you're going to have to, he files financial statements or
Yes.
something like that? And
Yep.
you do that on behalf of that, right?
Right.
And when you came to him initially, it was a free consultation, right?
Yes.
And the flat fee for this kind of a thing is usually like $4,000 or $5,000.
Yes.
If I'm doing my math correctly here, I'm looking. You owed $38,000. You
That's
ended
right.
up paying $1,500. You paid Mike $4,000 or $5,000. You
That's
made
right.
out, didn't you?
Yes.
And that's why you're here today, right?
Well, yeah.
Because there's people out there. There's people out there in your shoes who are
Yeah.
scared, who
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
paralyzed, and the only thing that they need to do is pick up the phone and call. Give out your number again, Mike.
It's toll free, 866-477-7762 or 866 IRS problems.
All right, very good. I want to thank you for coming here.
Thank
And
you,
Thanks
Steve.
for taking your time.
You bet.
Because, like
My
I've
pleasure.
told, everybody here is not an actor. This is the real thing. This is the
That's right.
real deal.
It helps
As
to carry
Howie
the weight.
Mandel says, this is the deal.
Yeah.
Okay, and he's the real deal.
Thank you,
for being
Matt.
on the
Thanks
show.
for taking the time out of your Saturday.
Typically, Mike, people come to you and they're, for lack of a better word, scared out of their wits, aren't they?
Yep, and their back's against the wall, a lot of them.
And they're worried. You probably see a lot of people break down in your office.
Oh, I go through boxes of Kleenex a week.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And you tell them you're going to try and help them out. And you do. I mean, the reason I'm even doing this show, and a lot of people approach me about doing shows like this, is because you're the real deal. And I have to say
Thank
that
you.
over and over again.
We help a lot of people out.
Because a lot of people, they get in difficulties, they put themselves, maybe unintentionally,
Yeah.
they're good people,
Right.
bad things happen to them, and you help them out.
Absolutely.
Because the IRS is not your friend. Is it?
Oh, no. They're a brutal agency. You don't want to get in their crosshairs.
Yeah, so thank God we have somebody like you protecting, the people who are kind of, naive. Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
Okay? Well, that's good. Well, we're going to bring on another one of your clients. And he had a major problem too, and you solved that too. So we're going to go right now. Right. My next guest and client of Mike's is Larry Gonzalez. Welcome to the show.
How do you do?
I want to emphasize you're not an actor.
No.
You came here on this Saturday because Mike did some good things for you, didn't
He
he?
did some wonderful things for me.
You, as I understand it, owed the IRS quite a bit of money, something like $50,000.
Around there, yes.
Before we even get into why you owed the money, how'd that make you feel?
It was probably one of the worst feelings I've ever come across.
The story is you had an ex-wife that didn't take care of business, didn't pay things, hid the letters from the IRS. When you found those letters after she left, how long was it from the time that you found those letters to the time you contacted Mike?
I would say about 3 years.
I thought it would be right away. No,
No, I tried.
This brings out a good point. 3 years.
Yeah.
And Mike, you probably you're more of a testament to anything else about this. The average person is scared and they wait, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
You were paralyzed, right?
I was paralyzed, but I was trying to deal with them on a personal basis.
So you went there and tried to represent yourself.
In a sense, yes. And I just threw my arms up. I gave up. I couldn't go on anymore. You know, I saw.
Well, what did you do by yourself? You called them up?
Oh, well, you know what that's like, trying to get a hold of them on the phone.
Okay, it's difficult.
It's very difficult.
So finally you got an appointment?
I heard Michael's advertisement on the radio.
So you hadn't even met with him yet?
Haven't met with him.
Took you 3 years? I mean, literally, you waited 3 years?
He was hearing my commercials for 3 years.
3 years. You wanted to make sure this was the right guy, or what?
No, actually, I probably waited about 3 years, and then I started hearing Michael's commercials.
Yeah.
And then I contacted him and spoke with him on the phone. We had the consultation, which he did not charge me for. And then after that, Michael got the ball rolling, and within a year, a little over a year, settled for pennies on the dollar.
And
best feeling, it's like the weight of the world's been lifted off my shoulders.
And roughly how much did you end up paying him out of
50,000? 9 to 12 maybe, right
Really?
around there.
During this whole time, while he was representing you, the IRS couldn't go after your bank account, they couldn't garnish any wages, nothing.
While Michael was representing me, no, they could not. Prior to that, they did.
So in other words, during those 3 years, what I'm really trying to get at here is what motivated you to make a phone call to him? They garnished your wages.
I garnished wages, levied the accounts. I just couldn't keep dodging the bullet. So
you tried to open other bank accounts or something like that? Or
Oh
what?
yeah, you would open up one account and close one and open up another.
yeah, I was.
They're after you pretty good, weren't they?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good. So basically what happened here, Mike, is there was an offer and a compromise
Yes.
made, right?
Yep.
Based on your assets, right?
Yeah.
It took about a year to wrap this up, and you
Yeah.
ended up paying, substantially less, right?
Right.
Are you current on your taxes today?
Oh
The
yeah.
IRS is watching.
I'm still with Michael, and I'm going to remain with Michael for the rest of my life.
That's an interesting point you had. Do you do regular returns for people?
We do for the folks that we help out.
No
We-
kidding.
yeah, we
So
conti-
once you help somebody out, you'll continue to
do
file
the
their
returns, yes.
Wow. So you're in safe hands, good hands.
I'm in
right?
great hands.
That's good. You'd highly recommend Mike to anybody.
Oh yeah. Even my worst enemy, if I had one.
But one of the conditions of the offer and compromise, which is a legal binding contract, is you have to pay and file on time for 5 years.
Really?
So it makes sense for the client to remain at least
Sure.
for 5 years.
Has it been 5 years?
It'll be 5 years by the end of '08, but like I said, I'm going to continue to
Yeah,
use Michael's services.
The most important thing is you have great peace of mind, right?
Yes.
You don't have to look over your shoulder.
I can
stuff like
sleep
that.
at night now.
That's good.
You can leave the jet skis out.
Yeah, tell that story real briefly. I understand you had some jet skis. They're worth, what, $5,000 or something?
Yeah, right around
And
there.
you used to pull them in the garage at night or something like that?
Yeah, you'd hide them.
Hide them. Okay, you're through hiding things.
I'm through hiding
Okay,
things.
great. I want to thank you for being on the show.
Thank
Real
you for
pleasure.
having me.
Thank you for being here, seriously.
Michael, thank you so much.
I appreciate it very much.
Mike, your client Larry made a very important point that once you handle their taxes, their problems, they stay with you.
Yes.
And I think that's a very interesting and very important aspect of the service that you provide, so they don't get in trouble again.
Yeah, you got to remain in current compliance for 5 years after the offer is accepted. And what we do is we try to keep the client in compliance for those 5 years.
Right.
And we have a lot of clients who have stayed with us beyond the 5 years.
What percentage of people would you say that come to you that owe money, just didn't file taxes, or were delinquent in their taxes, and they owe a great sum of money? What percentage of all the cases you have?
Oh, I would say that's a huge percentage. That's probably 70–80%.
So you do a lot of offers and compromise,
Oh, yes,
right?
yes, we do. I've done personally about 2,000 offers over
Okay.
the last 10 years.
Wow. And the IRS is pretty happy with...
They should be, because
yeah.
I'm bringing them money
Right.
that they would ordinarily not
Not
collect.
get, yeah. Well, that's great. Well, you keep up the good work, and I have one other client who decided to drop by today
Great.
because, they admire everything you're doing for them.
Great.
Okay, so we're going to go to that client right now.
Okay.
And Mike, you had another client that was nice enough to come by, Rob Foley. How are you? And I want to
Good,
emphasize
thanks.
one thing. We're in Studio City. You drove almost from Riverside, didn't you?
Yes, correct.
72 miles.
Yes.
Did anybody pay you to get here?
No.
Anybody paying you to be on the show?
No.
You're a real person, aren't you?
Yes.
The bottom line is you're a person that Mike really helped. And if you could tell our audience a little bit about what your particular IRS problem was, what was it?
Okay, I'd gone to a tax preparer that was incorrectly doing tax returns.
Fraudulently?
Fraudulently. I didn't know this until I
Okay.
read about it in the newspaper.
Right.
And I got a letter from the IRS saying that I owed $32,000.
Okay.
And I ended up getting a hold of Michael, and that's why I'm here.
We are the last client that Mike had on our show. You know, I asked him the same thing, and he said I went to Mike, and then I asked him a key question was, how long did it take you to call Mike? His answer was 3 years. Okay, I want to emphasize this point because a lot of people are paralyzed when the IRS comes after them, and they're scared out of their wits. So my question to you is, after you got this letter that you owed more money, how long did it take you to contact Mike?
Well, I had contacted another attorney. They
Yeah.
said they couldn't help me. They said I made too much money,
Right.
and that I had to make payments. But if that was the case, I wouldn't have contacted them to begin with. So I heard about Mike on the radio maybe 3 weeks after that.
Wow.